Beatrice, thank you so much for joining Doreen and I on the Belonging Project, the Nomadic Diaries today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to hear your thoughts, perceptions, and experiences on belonging. And we want to dive right into really understanding where have you maintained connections of belonging through all of your virtual and also local places.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I like how you phrased that. Um, because you didn't exactly ask where you belong, because that's a loaded question and complicated. Um, where have I maintained connection? Well, I was born in France, so that's like one strong connection that I guess will always be there. Um, but I'm not French because the droit du sol, like the birthright, changed a couple of years before I was born. I am actually Brazilian Egyptian from birth. That's what I've always been. My parents, one is Brazilian, one is Egyptian. Um, lived in France for a while. The other places that I, I wouldn't even say consider home because I also think that's a bit loaded. Um, Egypt. I did spend 17 years in Egypt.
Mm.
And now I've been in Dubai for a while, Dubai, UAE. Spent a good amount of time in France as well. Went back to do my studies there. And Brazil, although I've never lived there, my Brazilian grandma raised me when I was younger, and it is like Portuguese language, the Portuguese language, sorry, and Brazil is kind of like my language of love in a way. The language, and there's a lot of things about the culture that really resonates with me. So yeah, those are kind of the places. But then again, I don't really feel like tied down to any of these places. I'm not a patriotic person at all, never have been. Don't really understand it either, to be honest with you. Um, so yeah, I feel like you can build connections with lots of different places and depending on like whether it's your heritage or your decision to move to a place or your partner is a blend of different things, you know?
Mm.
So those are the places, I guess.
So has your understanding of the topic of belonging, I'm imagining that that has accompanied you throughout your lifetime. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my understanding is continuously changing. I think since I started in betweenish my podcast, my understanding has really shifted from. I think I used to always feel, and it was one of the reasons I started it. I used to feel like, well, I don't belong anywhere. You know, I'm in betweenish. I'm in between things all the time. But now, and this is a very recent understanding I have of belonging, I think it deserves a lot of work that you have to do as well. It's not just external. And I think it would
Mm.
be quite unrealistic for me to be like, well, I can only belong to someone who's Brazilian Egyptian with a very like heavy Francophone French influence. Like that's pretty niche. You know, it's not
Yeah.
that it doesn't exist, um, but it's pretty niche. So yeah, my understanding of belonging has definitely changed over time. Yeah.
And how do you feed and nurture that understanding now? I mean, how do you how do you take care of it? Because isn't belong, I mean, for me, belong, I'm in betweenish as well. I completely get this. All three of us are in betweenish, aren't we, Megan?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm just really curious how other people take this experience called in-betweenish and how we love and nurture ourselves in the presence of that.
Hmm. Um,
Or is that a foreign concept? Sorry.
no, it's not a foreign concept, but it's definitely an evolving concept for me.
Yes.
Um, I think the younger version of me always thought it was more other people need to make me feel like I belong. Other people need to be inclusive. And now that's really changed. Now I think there's a lot of internal work that you have to do, and I think that that's where the nurturing comes from. A lot of people don't feel like they belong, I think, because they reject the different parts of themselves. Um, so I think I almost think being in betweenish, and that's not just reserved to people like us who have, lived and experienced and been influenced by different countries. I think anyone, even if you're born and raised in
Yes.
the same city your whole life, you can also be in betweenish. I
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it really um to really nurture that, it goes hand in hand with therapy. And I don't mean traditional therapy and going down to a therapist's office and CBD therapy, the CBT therapy, or CBD for some people. That's not what I mean, but I mean, like, I think it takes a lot of like going into yourself and kind of like understanding what are the things that made me feel held when I was younger. I think a lot of belonging goes back to those younger years.
Mm.
And that could be really hard for some people because many people don't have memories of that and many people don't want to go there for whatever reason. But I think, yeah, there's a lot of internal work that you have to do and then bring in the people that matter to you into that world and into that work. That's how I've tackled it. I'm not a professional in this field at all. I don't have any degrees in this. I'm not an authority figure. And I always say, like, confusion is welcome. And this is something that I truly believe. Um, I'm confused. Recently I was out with a friend and she's like, "Oh, you have your belongings so figured out. You get it. You get where you come from. You get your roots." I'm like, "What gave you that impression?" And she told me, "Because you have a podcast and that's what you talk about." I'm like, "Yeah, I have a podcast and I talk about this because I'm confused. I'm talking to other people who are also confused and like reassuring them that like it's fine, you know?"
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I wanted to touch on two things that you said in there. One being how even if you are monoplace, you can be in betweenish because I don't
Hmm.
think the term monocultural is appropriate or accurate in any space in our globalized world. We're very much influenced and touched by different cultures and many levels and layers. And so I would tend to agree that that adds a lot of confusion and complexity to how do we talk about our belonging and our identity. And a follow-up question I had for you in that, yes, I also agree it takes the internal work, the introspection of who am I, and how do I contribute to this world, in my sense of belonging. But I'm wondering, do you intentionally create spaces to welcome individuals who might not have that internal confidence yet that they belong?
Yeah, I mean, I try to. I think it would be good to ask the people that I invite on, but I hope I create that space. It's my intention. I think it's a lot of these questions can be very lonely and can be very confusing. And um, I guess like what I want to tell people is that it's fine. It's okay. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to question. It's okay not to know and to figure it out. And I also think it's an ever-evolving process, you know. Doreen, I think you just moved to Mexico not too long ago. And that's and Megan, you also moved last year, right? So
Yes.
like it's not like this process stops at a certain age. I think obviously in your developmental years when you're growing up, when you're a child or an infant, or a teenager, the influence is very different because you are less, mm, you're not asked about, do you want this influence in your life? Whereas when you get older, you can decide. Some of us can decide. Um, some of us don't have the option all the time, you know. But I think it's important to create the space, and I try to do that. And I'm not coming at it from a place of this is what you should do. I have no idea what you should do. I think you should ask. I think you should introspect, like you said, and I think you should, whether it's read about it or listen to podcasts about it. There are so many podcasts today that explore this topic, or books, or do some research. I think you have to be invested in your own belonging to feel belonging. I don't think you shouldn't put the onus on other people. And while when we were children and dependent on the caretakers and the adults in our lives, yes, we could put some onus on them. As adults, we can't do that anymore. We have to kind of, in a sense, take control, even if that control is messy and confused and figuring it out. I think that's just part of life. Yeah. I don't know
Does
if that answers your question.
does that answer the question, Megan?
Yeah, thank you for exploring that and sharing how to create spaces.
Yes, I'm also interested in the subject of making confusion welcome. Because I think we can handle confusion in certain parts of our lives. And then, there's a process of moving through the confusion, hopefully to clarity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in our physical well-being, which as somebody who had a bit of ADHD, I discovered in my 60s, I needed to have very streamlined environments. So I think the confusion and the messiness can occur emotionally, mentally, relationships, financially, in all of those invisible areas that we carry with us when we migrate and we move around the world. So I am curious as to what you say as how, maybe not how to, but what do you see people having success with as they move through the confusion? Do they get to clarity? Is it okay to stay in confusion as long as we want?
Um,
I know those are kind of heady questions, but I find a daily practice of cleaning up and clearing things. So I'm just wondering if there's a mental way of doing that.
I
Hey,
think
if I'm down a rabbit hole, girls, just say no.
no, it's okay. I think clarity, like belonging, like some of these big but like concepts are really
Mhm.
hard to achieve, or maybe oh, so I'm speaking for myself here. Maybe they are in their entirety unachievable. What I've noticed is that I can have moments of belonging and I can have moments of clarity. And I think that's much more realistic
Yeah.
and achievable. Um, and and also knowing that you can achieve those moments, whether it's clarity, whether it's belonging, whether it's feeling a sense of home, um, I think that's enough to keep me going, you know? And obviously, I think the more well, it's not obvious, but I think the more you introspect, the more you realize what can create those moments. But it's not like if you recreate the exact setting, whatever it may be,
Right.
that you will feel that belonging again, because it takes so many things. It's both internal, the environment around you, the people around you. So I don't know, it involves so many different elements, and even if you try to line up everything, some things are just not in your control, and that's fine as well. Um, for me, I try to create like little practices that make me feel more connected to my culture. Um, for
Tell us
example,
more. Tell us more.
Um, one of the ways I do that, for me personally, like I said, I love the Portuguese language, specifically the accent from Rio, the Carioca accent. It's very particular. I only came to realize that it was very different than the rest of Brazil a couple of years ago, I thought it was like a pretty normal accent in Brazil, but it's actually in Brazil, it's even considered like the Carioca accent, like from Rio, not just state, but city, um, is very particular. And the reason I didn't know that is because that's the environment that I grew up in, from my Brazilian influence. That's where my family's from. The way I feel connected to it, because a lot of the family on that side is just not of my age and much older, and a lot of them gone actually, is through listening to podcasts and listening to music. And when I'm having a bad day, I will put on my favorite, Portuguese Brazilian playlist, specifically. Or yeah, that Brazilian Portuguese, I don't know how people say it. But I will play that. And if I need like a pick-me-up because I had a tough day, I will make one of my favorite comfort foods that my grandma made me growing up. And that makes me feel whole, and that makes me feel connected to that part of who I am, to this person who's also no longer here. And I'm just creating this small little moment for myself where I feel clarity in how I feel about this part of my being, you know? Um, I think the cultures that you belong to or can feel belonging to are very tied to the people from that culture.
Yes.
So for me, although my mom's Brazilian and we grew up in a Francophone household, so everything was in French. Growing up, I was confused. I thought I was French. And it was also my first language. And it just didn't make sense to me. Like, so I'm not French. Like that's where we went every summer, and it was confusing to me. But the Brazilian part came through my grandma. My mom would only speak to us in Portuguese if she's like doesn't want someone to understand, or if she's like, yelling at us or punishing us somehow. Um, Somehow the language stayed related to my grandma for me. Sorry if that's a bit personal. But yeah, I think the places and the cultures that you belong to are very related to the individuals that influenced you. For me, it was in my childhood. Um, Although I've been living in the UAE for 7 years, I don't feel belonging here in quite the same, belonging to the culture here in quite the same way. I've never felt belonging to a land. I don't really know what that feels like. And I think for people who were born in a very multicultural environment, I think that's perfectly normal. And I think that needs to be normalized as well.
Oh,
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beatrice, I love how you're bringing to light, how belonging can change over time. It's always evolving. It's to people, it's to language, it's to customs, traditions, and then also into adulthood. To talk about a little bit what you were mentioning earlier, when we're past our developmental years, it's our choice, it's our intention, it's our determination. And I'm even thinking about how work and professional life and career plays a part in our sense of belonging. Would you want to share anything on that track about that additional people in our lives, and how do we belong to career?
Mm.
Belong to career. That's one I'm trying to figure out. I think Megan and we've talked about this before. Um, I'm a designer, and I'm also a podcaster. But before that, this was not part of my career, but the very first kind of like practice that I grew up with in my life was art, drawing. And I get this from my Brazilian side, and I get this from my grandma. We would sit down together and draw things, and like and there would always be Brazilian music playing in the background. Music is a very big part of both Brazilian and Egyptian culture. So it was always very present for us. And I think my art practice that started with my grandma led me to my design practice. Sorry, I'm telling you the trajectory, but it does. Sorry, I'll repeat that again. Sorry, I'm telling you the trajectory, but it does like tie in. I studied design in France. I went back to France to do my undergrads and masters, and I worked there, and then I moved here to the UAE, Dubai, UAE. Now here, a lot of people have corporate jobs, and they're not necessarily in creative fields. And so it feels a little bit like I'm on the outside sometimes. I'm doing something very creative and I'm doing something very different than friends. And yeah, so I think this part is something I'm still trying to figure out. And it could feel intimidating at times, you know. It's a much less, there's a lot of technical side to design, but it's not like being in PR or being in a lawyer or being in government affairs or any of that, you know. So yeah, I think career, for those of us who are lucky to be able to have a career in something that we truly love and are passionate about, that's really beautiful. That's not to say it's always easy. I don't think anything is. I think we really need to manage expectations. Like, just life is not easy. Life can be difficult, and that's fine. But I think for those of us who are lucky to do something that we are truly passionate about, that can bring a lot of fulfillment. But for your career, it's not just about, you know, emotional fulfillment. There are different buckets that you need to like also tap into, whether that's progression, whether that's finances, whether that's the team you're working with, which you don't always have control over when you're working in a company, you know, especially when I think you come from a multicultural background. Now, that's not so much an issue here, but when I was working in France, yeah, I worked in a company where I was like the only different person, you know, who spoke different languages, and that was not always valued actually. In an interview
Yes.
when I went in for an interview once, and like the person who was interviewing me, who hired me, was like, "Oh yeah, I see you speak 4 languages. You're not going to use them here." It was like, yeah, French is the thing that matters, you know? So not all cultures feel quite the same way about being multicultural. Some cultures find it intimidating. Some people, I think, more than cultures, find it intimidating. Um, and I think that that's something that when you're cross-cultural, when you're multicultural, you have to confront that. And it depends on the city you live in, because like some cities are just more open to what's
Mm.
different, while
Mm.
some cities are like, no, you have to look and sound and be and present and act this way to be accepted into our community. Um, yeah,
I
it's
find
a
that,
struggle.
Yes.
yeah, it is a struggle. However, can I just share a little bit of my experience in moving to Mexico? We moved to Mexico in our retirement, and it was I hate to say that I'm a failed repat or repatriated person, but maybe that's one way to describe me. And it was a bold move to move again at that age. And so my husband's in his late 70s, and um, yeah, it still feels, in some respects, I belong to parts of the community, but not other parts of the community. And there's very much a culture here of acceptance of the people from the US and the North and Canadians, because there's 100 years of of expats in the city, and they came originally and worked with the locals and worked with the indigenous people. And so we actually sit on Otomi land and Chichimeca land, and it's really growing. It's like growing another limb. It's like growing another piece of your understanding in in honoring that and not overstepping it. So I think I'm used to being on the outside. I'm used to being an outsider. It's almost more familiar. But
Mhm.
there's such a blessing to at this stage in my life be growing this other limb of, okay, I'm gonna see how far I can get along with this. Where are my edges? Where is my tolerance? How to grow? So basically, I'm just saying that, you are in one generation, but for other generations who are listening, they also have the option of stretching and growing and just even taking on this journey to be more aware of belonging, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I don't think this is particular to the millennial generation or younger generations than,
Right.
Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I think I think every generation is a bit self-centered, to be honest with you, and we think we're unique, and I don't think we're unique. I think we all go through similar things in different
Yeah.
times, and then the world is also changing, right? So we also have to get with the times. So yeah, I think it's kind of normal. And I don't personally, from the outside, I don't see your repatriation as failure. I see it as, you know,
It's an
exploring
experiment.
sorry?
It was an experiment.
Yeah. Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't think I would consider repatriating to any of my home countries,
Mm.
be it Brazil, Egypt, or France. I've had that experience. Um, Always been an outsider from day one because when I moved to Egypt, I didn't speak Arabic yet, and Arabic has difficult letters. Today I can say them no problem, but like when I first moved there, I couldn't say the ha, for example. And so when I would say those words, I would say them with an H, which is wrong. And people would make fun of me in good faith. It wasn't like bullying or anything like that. And also in Egypt, sometimes we have this thing of like when you mispronounce things, it's seen as cute rather than wrong, you know? So I had that privilege or advantage, I guess. But since I moved to Egypt, I never felt like I belonged there. When I moved back to France as an adult, I was like, okay, as a young adult, I was like, I'm going back to the place I was born. I should belong here. And I didn't. And I was made to feel very much like an outsider. And I think that that also fed into my narrative. So I was like, I am an outsider. And in Brazil, you know, the thing is, I have the advantage, I guess, of like in both of my home countries looking like I'm from there. I look
Yes.
Brazilian. I also look Egyptian.
Yes.
Um, but it's in the words I use, I speak Portuguese like a grandma, like my grandma, because that's the Portuguese I learned. So it sounds very outdated to some people. And some of the things I say, they're like, what are you saying? My grandma says that. Why are you saying that? And I'm also made to feel sometimes like an outsider. I also think I've built that in my head a lot. Um, but yeah, all that to say, I don't think this is particular to millennials. I don't think this is particular to Westerners. I think there's a lot of, this is actually something that sometimes frustrates me a little bit. There's a lot of Westerners in the space of um, talking about multiculturalism and in-betweenish things. But there's a lot of other experiences as well from people from different corners of the world that are just less heard about. We do live in a very Western-centric world. There's no denying that. And I think it's also important to bring in those perspectives of people from different places. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
So in closing, I know you don't give advice. You were very clear that you about that. But do you have any gift or wisdom that you would like to give to people who are listening, who are really working and really trying to build their own unique sense of belonging in a new place?
I have advice that I am implementing in my life and with my close circle. I don't think it's for people who are moving to a new place in particular. I think it could apply to anyone who is cross-cultural. And I think that is figuring out your values. When you come from different places and when you belong to different places and when you've been influenced by different places, every place comes with its own set of values, just like languages or dialects or customs. But values are harder because you don't see them, and your values are really just tested when you are tested in difficult situations. You know, you don't really think about your values on a good day when, everything's perfectly fine. When you're tested, you will think about them because then you have to make certain decisions and they might completely alter the path of your life, or it might not be that drastic and it might just be an important decision you have to make, but it won't alter everything. So I think you have to figure out your values for yourself because when you're growing up, it's the same thing. You can rely on your elders to get some guidance on your values, depending on the elders, of course. Not all parents, not everyone had wonderful parents. But I think as you get older, as you become a young adult, as you go into different decades in your life, I think it's worth reassessing what your values are, because I think your values are the root of a lot of decisions that you make in your life. And coming from different places, there could be a value of, extreme honesty that can, for some other people, look seem a bit rude. There are other values of like really coddling and, always having to like take care of the youngest or, the kids never grow up kind of mentality. These are very loose values, but I think it's important to figure out your values for yourself
Yes.
because I think that makes everything that comes after that easier. And I think we live in a society now where you're not encouraged to think about these things so much. Social media is all about the next thing that's happening, the next thing you want to buy. And then I think people are just not questioning their values as much. And I think that's
Yes.
why a lot of people feel unease. That's my personal take on it. So if I had one piece of advice for anyone in any life circumstance, it's figure out your values and not just figure them out and write them on paper. On paper, it's great, but it's like, how do you actually live by them? How do they show up in your day-to-day life? And yeah, like you can live in a way where you feel like you're in integrity between how you act and who you are to yourself, not to the external world, and your values. I think that's very important.
Thank you.
Yes,
Excellent. There's some
full
very
of wisdom.
great wisdom there. Would you like to lead us into the lightning round, Megan?
Yes, yes. Beatrice, thank you again for being such a sage on the stage. Thank you.
I don't know that expression. Thank you.
And we want to end the podcast with some really fun, lighthearted, but maybe hard to answer questions. I'll start off with the question, what are some synonyms for belonging?
Ooh, that's not easy. Synonyms for belonging. Ease, maybe. Not quite, but maybe. Um,
Did you say youth or use?
oh, ease.
Ease. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Ease. Yeah.
Ease.
But I'm not sure I even agree with myself on that one. That's a really difficult question, actually. Synonyms of belonging.
Well, let's go to an easier one.
Yes.
Sure. Sorry.
Okay, yes. If you could, sorry. If you could teleport to any country right now for 24 hours, where would you go?
Oh, I think I would go back to the Seychelles. It's where I got married a couple of years ago, and I think that's where I would go back. I love it's one of the most beautiful sunsets I've ever seen, and beautiful beaches and beautiful people, full of life, in the moment. Yeah, I think that's where I would go back.
And if you could describe home in 3 words, what 3 words just come up?
Uh, well, I'm not Danish at all, but uge, that word,
Mm,
it's up on in our home.
Uga, see,
Yeah, for sure. Coziness, I guess, is the closest thing for,
yes.
if you don't know that concept. Yeah, coziness, I think, warmth. Can I use 4 words?
You may. We're not
Uh,
charging for words today.
okay, that's good to know. So coziness, warmth, cuddles,
Mm.
and understanding.
Oh,
Mm.
beautiful. Thank you.
And our last question is, if you could become fluent in one language, what would it be and why?
I think I'd be very curious to explore an Asian language. I think I'd be very curious to explore Korean because it's just so different. The alphabet is so different than any of the alphabets that I'm used to. The sounds are so different. Um, I think, yeah, it's something completely different. I already speak Arabic, so that's a different alphabet already. And then the Latin alphabet that belongs to French, Portuguese, and English. But yeah, I think just something completely different would be super interesting to learn. Challenging too, but because I wouldn't have any frame of reference. But that's fine.
Well, thank you. Thank you for answering our lightning round questions.
Yes, thank
Thank you for
you.
asking.
And Beatrice, would you share where people can find your podcast?
You can find In-Betweenish on any podcast listening platform that you use. And you can find us at www.inbetweenish.net. That's our website, but I don't think anyone listens to platforms directly from the website. So I think they choose their favorite platform. So yeah, and I'm also on Instagram, so you can find us on there. And please reach out. I mean, if any of this resonates, if you're confused and you want to share, that's perfectly fine. I love hearing from people. I think it's really special to make that connection with people. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being willing to come on Nomadic Diaries, the Belonging series or the Belonging Project, and share with us.
Thank you,
Megan?
Beatrice.
Thank you so much for having me. And I think it's such an important topic to talk about and make it easier for people, like break it down. So thank you.
Well, you helped us break it down today. Thank you very much.
Yes, you did.
And in closing, I'll just say for our listeners, if you are gaining benefit from Nomadic Diaries, please like a review. And we'll say masalama, sayonara, hasta luego, and cheerio.